Hi, this is Chip7564, and today we're going to be reviewing all the Nintendo remotes. So obviously we're going to start with the NES remote. Now, as you can see, it's just a plain rectangle. So it's really hard to get a grip on these things, and it's very simple. It has a control pad, select, start, B, and A. Obviously, you'd probably know that these buttons did evolve in later remotes, but this remote's really simple. It's a little too small for my standards, but you know, what are you gonna do? To play NES games, you don't need much of a remote. I mean, the games make up for it. So now on to the next one. I don't feel that the Super Nintendo remote did much of a change. I mean, it's practically the same remote with two more buttons, and it's got a little of a dog bone shape. I feel that this remote is very incomplete because I feel like I need to grab onto something like here, like on the Sega Genesis or PlayStation remotes. I find are much better, even though the PlayStation remote really copied this remote. So they added a left and a right button on the back. Control pad still there, select and start. And they added the two other buttons which I was talking about, the X and Y button and the traditional A and B. But altogether, this remote isn't that fancy either. Now, this is probably my least favorite remote, and this is the Nintendo 64 remote. This remote, it just seems like it came out of outer space. For God's sake, you got this weird trigger on the back, the Z button. They kept the R and L. They added whatever you call this, the analog stick. And they still have the A and B, although X and Y aren't there, but there is a C button. This was mostly used for camera, although it was used for also attacks, and like in games such as Ocarina of Time. But there are some games where you can play like this, such as Robotron 64, but most games, such as Zelda Ocarina of Time, you have to play like this. You got no choice. Which I would honestly rather have this right there, so I could play like this. Well, aside from that, you can put a memory card or rumble pack in there, but other from that, this remote's kind of a piece of crap. This is probably my favorite Nintendo remote, and that's the GameCube. This remote is sturdy and it's just awesome. It's molded to your hand. It's got the analog stick was put into a good position, as opposed to this right in the square middle of the remote. And we got X and Y back, A and B, C stick again for view, camera, and we got the Z, but it's in a better place, and R and L. Well, anyway, so now we got the Wii remote. Now this remote, when you first look at it, it just looks like a regular remote control. But as you've noticed, if you actually turn it around this way, it's similar to an NES remote. As you can see, there's a control pad and there's the two buttons and start and select. But anyway, I find this remote kind of odd. It's very unique, but there's nothing bad about it, but I don't feel there's anything good about it. Now, of course, the Wii remote did have analog stick added to it, so you could have 3D control. Here we see. You could see, so you can move your view and then let go. But, you know, this is really a standard for 3D games, because if you play a 3D game on that Super Nintendo, it's just not going to work. So, that's all the Nintendo remotes I've got. I don't have a Virtual Boy, but I don't know who would actually really want to review that remote, basing that nobody has that. So, that's all I have for today. Goodbye.